ready for Pac-12 play here on Talkin Beavers. Is there a quarterback controversy in Corvallis? We get our analyst take on who will be starting on Saturday. Plus, the Beavers getting ready to face a Colorado team fresh off a marquee win at Oregon. And the latest in a search for a new athletic director for Oregon State. All that and more on Talkin Beavers still ahead. Well, Corvallis will be quiet this weekend as the Beavers head out on the road to Boulder to kick off Pac-12 play. Colorado coming in off what many are calling a program-defining win over Oregon last weekend. Welcome into Talkin Beavers. I'm Amanda Maynard alongside Lindsay Schnell, James Dockery, and Nigel Burton. Oregon State falling to Boise State over the weekend, but as we get ready for the conference slate, how do we feel about this team?
I don't feel great. Look, they played well in the second half against Boise State. I like that, but where was that fight the first half? And where was that fight against Idaho State? Last week we sat here and you guys told me, oh, it's tough to get up for Idaho State. Okay, I'll buy that a little bit. But you haven't won a game in a year. You know, that's a problem. And then to not bring that against Boise, like that could have been a, I don't know about program-defining win like you talked about with Colorado, but that could have been a big-time win for them. And they looked terrible the first half.
Yeah, I'm really confused, Coach. I'm not too sure because I don't know if Boise State is really that good. And so, you know, judging Oregon State compared to a program that's already seasoned and ready to go, or are we just not that good yet? So I think I still need another game to really see exactly where we're at. But I agree with you, Linz, and I feel like the Beavers should have been ready to start a little bit faster.
Well, I know we're going to use some tape maybe later on of things that I said from previous weeks. One, we went through the schedule that Boise State had, and we said this was going to be their Super Bowl, and that's exactly how they approached it. They understood that if they won this game, their next hardest game is against BYU, right. And after that, they play Woodsum-Matthew and Terrible Tech and whoever else is in
until they meet San Diego State in the Mountain West Conference.
Right, but I'm just saying, but right now, that's their Super Bowl. Right. Plus, they had a bye going into that game, so they had everything scripted for those first two series that those kids knew down pat because they had run through it so many different times. They absolutely took it to the Beavs to start that game because they also understood when you're a road team, you need to jump on that opponent quickly to keep the crowd out. So literally everything went according to plan for them. And by the time the Beavers realized what hit them, they fought back, but the damage was done.
The part that's confusing to me is that we sat here after the first game against Minnesota, and I was like, they're going to beat someone. They're going to surprise some people. Things are going to be okay. And now they come home, and where's that fire?
Just remember, it's not linear, right? I know everybody wants to make everything linear. They want to see steps and everything moves in a certain direction. Normally, it just doesn't happen like that. So there's a great chance that it will still happen the way that you thought it will happen coming out of Minnesota, just maybe not in the order in which you think it's going to happen.
And obviously, one of the biggest differences between the first and second half was, of course, quarterback play. Daryl Garrettson coming out with an injury, Connor Blount coming in. I would like to know if any of you knew even who Connor Blount was before Saturday.
No, and you know what? Neither did his teammates because on the sideline there were reports that people were go number 12.
Right?
Go number 12. No one knew who it was. TV people didn't know. Boise State certainly didn't know. So when we talk about no quarterback controversy, right, it's Gary Anderson has said Daryl's the starter. That's who's going to be our guy. He is a little banged up. But here's what I think about 2012. Beavers come out hot. Sean Mannion gets a procedure done on his knee, right? They play Cody Vaz, who no one had also ever heard of. He plays great. They rush Mannion back. Suddenly we have a quarterback controversy.
All right, for more on the quarterback battle, we're bringing in Mike Parker. Mike, who do you think is starting this week?
Well, the starter in the second half against Boise State, Connor Blount, everybody in the stadium was answering. I mean, it was sort of the rutabaga murmurs. Rutabaga, the word for all murmuring in a stadium or a crowd. Who is that guy? His name's Connor Blount. Even though he played very well in the second half, Coach Anderson made it clear that if Daryl Garrettson was healthy, that Daryl would be the starter. Daryl's been working and taking most of the reps this week, so I suspect it'll be back to Daryl Garrettson, but Connor Blount has elevated himself up to the number 2 spot.
And as a guy that is, you know, around the team day in and day out, what was kind of your reaction to seeing Connor out there and play as well as he did in that second half?
It was, my first reaction was, with the 42,000 other people, quite honestly, who is that guy? I started to articulate that it was, well, it looks like the Beavers are going with, and I wanted to say Mason Moran. I saw that he was wearing a 12 and not a 15. And so I quickly consulted my alphabetical roster and saw that it was Connor, and I said Blunt. It's actually pronounced Blount. I also said he was from Waukesha, Wisconsin. It's more, I'm told, Waukesha, Wisconsin. So my reaction was, wow, this guy ascended quickly, and I was very impressed with his poise. A true freshman walk-on thrown into that situation, I thought performed very well. I was impressed.
And certainly while everybody is excited about the quarterback kind of battle brewing that some people are saying in Corvallis, and really kind of some of the bigger news happens up front. I guess Sean Harlow may be coming back this weekend. What is kind of your assessment of whether or not we'll see him play this weekend? Because that's kind of a surprise.
Well, Amanda, yeah, it's great. It's potentially great news, and in fact likely, that Sean Harlow will play against the Colorado Buffaloes in the Pac-12 opener this weekend, and in an almost in a different kind of way, with a veteran player, but similar in that no one expected to see Connor Blount necessarily on the field this year. I wasn't sure Beaver Nation, the coaches, even Sean himself expected to be on the field this year when there was talk of redshirting, but Sean has come off the scout team. He's practiced with the ones. He's practiced well. He's pronounced himself feeling well. So I think that's going to give the offensive line a huge hit, however they choose to use him, a huge boost in terms of whoever the quarterback is, Blount, Garrettson, McMarion, whatever. The offensive line is where it all starts. And if Sean Harlow can play, and I expect him to, that's a big lift for the team.
All right. Thanks, Mike. So how much will a Sean Harlow return help this line?
Well, it's big. I mean, they're so banged up on the offensive line. They just don't have depth. You know, they lost 4 guys in the offseason that they didn't see coming, so it's huge to get him back. But this is exactly what I was worried about, that Daryl Garrettson was not going to be alive come November 1st. He's hurt because he's getting hit so much. And I'm not saying, I'm not blaming, like, pointing the finger, but it's a problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm really excited that Sean's coming back, because anytime you can get back some, some senior leadership and just some experience on the offensive line, that's going to bode well. So I think we've been, lacking experience these last couple of weeks. So Sean coming back, slide him in at guard, center. I mean, I guess he's a guy that can really do anything, depending on where the coaches want to put him. So again, I'm very excited that Sean's coming back. Hopefully he truly is 100% and can contribute.
Yeah, he can move to any spot. I think that's big. I think there's going to be experimentation.
The experiment needs to start at tackle, because that's where they've struggled the most, and that's where you're going to deal with the best pass rusher. That's also where you're going to be on an island the most. So, that has obviously been a thing, and I know a lot was made of Daryl Garrettson hanging on to the football, maybe some things. Basically, what it came down to is if you really got a wider angle view, the Beaver receivers weren't getting loose, and there were some times when they were trying to, especially involve Jordan Villeman early on with some deep balls, trying to get him involved early in the offense, and they just weren't shaking loose. And so when that happens, then as a quarterback, you say, okay, I've actually got to wait for you to get open so that I can throw you the football. That's why he was hanging on and then started to get himself beat up a little bit. So obviously, if Sean can provide that extra half a second of protection, it'll be huge.
All right, still to come, more on the surprise backup, Connor Blount.
That's what I've been. I mean, they've called me QB, number 12, throughout camp, and I think now they know my name, I'd say, yeah.
And Boise State is known for an offense chock full of trick plays. Nigel is breaking down one of them from Saturday's game.
When you talk about Chris Peterson's Boise State teams, they were not only efficient, they didn't beat themselves. They went into games thinking that they would win. They would formation you to death. They flew around to the football. They didn't, you didn't find them outside of their gaps. They won on special teams. So, I mean, they were a well-rounded football team, and that's passed pretty well from Chris Peterson to Brian Harsin.
And certainly Boise State has made its reputation, built its reputation on those gimmick trick plays. And we're going to take a look at one of those in our standard TV and appliance play breakdown. Nigel?
That guy looked like he knew what he was talking about a little bit.
You've been getting a lot of props throughout the week, right?
Props, huh?
You got props?
Okay.
I got last week.
Props. Okay. All right. Well, so taking a look at what we were talking about last week with Boise State, one of the things I talked about was they will formation you to death. I coached against this team God knows how many times. I've actually tried to erase it from my memory. And this is one example of what we're talking about. Now, when you look at this thing, you're 29 seconds into the game. Okay, so 29 seconds into the game, this is what they throw at the Beavers, all right? If anybody can tell me what formation this is, I will give you the keys to my house, all right? But what you have here is a situation where you've got to find your eligible receivers quickly. And right now, from the moment they broke the huddle till they snapped the football, they had 3.8 seconds to identify who was there, who's eligible, and who can make a play, all those different things. What you have is you have O-linemen, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 there. That's a tight end, receiver, 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 and there's your running back. So the other thing that's an issue is, say you told your middle linebacker, hey, listen, if they come out in a funky formation, no worries, just find the running back. Well, where the heck is he? He's not even in the running back position. He's actually down here at the number 2 wide receivers position. You've got 1 eligible, 2, 3. Your 4th eligible receiver actually looks like he's an offensive tackle, and he's not. That's actually the tight end, and there's your 5th up top there. So your cover down is a complete issue, right? How do I figure out who's what? And is that guy on the line of scrimmage or is he not? I mean, so those are all the issues that they give you. The final piece is they broke this up into 3 different areas. So it's just a count for them, right? You got 1-on-1 up top. That's easy. But in the middle, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versus the Beavers have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the middle. Want to know why they end up going down to the bottom? Because at the bottom you have 4 versus 2 Beaver defenders. All bad. So what ends up happening, they take the ball, throw it out to the flat, and they actually have a play here. Now, that being said, this is why you don't do it a lot. Because in the end, it is gimmicky, and all it takes is one thing to go wrong, and the whole play blows up. That being said, the next play off this, they keep playing with it. The offense will build. So what happens is, instead of him stepping forward, the next time he steps back, they throw a lateral, and now who's covering him and who's covering him? So now they just create more plays and more problems off of all this stuff. Now, the funny part is Chris Peterson ends up taking this offense, takes it to Washington. You actually don't see the Huskies run this stuff a whole lot because there's a lot of moving parts to it, and it can be a little bit gimmicky, but it is a pain in the butt for defenses to defend.
And like you were mentioning, I mean, is there anything that can be taken, when you go up against Washington, from looking at this Boise State game for the Beavers?
You know what? Really, he's taken Washington and gotten pretty conservative there. Now, maybe it has to do with the fact that Jake Browning is still a young player and Myles Gaskin and all those guys, but it's still not exactly Boise State. If they have those kind of athletes like they have at Washington with John Ross, Darrell Daniels, all those different guys they have running around there, and they start doing this stuff, hold on to your hats.
All right. Thanks, Nigel.
No. Touchdown. There's an onside, and it looks like Oregon State's got it. There it is, off the edge. Bright Ugwebu again. Looping it. It is caught by Seth Collins again.
And it is time now to hand out our Wilson Motor Game balls for the week, and we actually have some similarities this time around. Lindsay, we'll start with you.
How about Connor Blount? This backup quarterback comes in. No one has ever heard of him. Most people don't even know who he is. And under the bright lights, when they're getting their butt kicked, he engineers a second half. I don't know, comeback seems like a strong word, but we can say rally at least.
All right, Nigel, you're up.
Well, I'm going to go defensively. This is my guy right here, Bright Ugwebu. And this really, I thought, that first play there set the tone for the second half when he absolutely blistered Mr. McNichol. 5 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss, I thought was just a huge performance by him, and look for more from the rest of the season.
All right, Doc.
I'm going with the money man, Seth Collins, former number 4, now rocking number 22. His first game with 100+ yards at receiver, still jumping over people, still being electrifying, really starting to find his groove as a receiver. I really love this kid. He's dynamite.
All right, 9 catches for 106 yards for Seth Collins. Doc, I want to know, as a former DB, what is making him so difficult for opposing secondaries?
Seth's mentality is making him difficult because, again, we always talk about it every week. We talk about, do you have that dog in you? And Seth has it. He just is a competitor. Boise State, Arizona State, LSU, it doesn't matter what team comes into the stadium, Seth is going to wake up ready to play football, ready to compete. I just love it. And it helps that he has game-breaking speed. He has game-breaking athleticism. Genes play a part as well.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys, too. Now, I've watched him on sidelines. sidelines, he can be a handful. But if you're a good coach, you kind of let him do his thing. He's going to talk a little too much. He's going to kind of irritate you at times. But you try to make sure you build that relationship with him where you let him do his thing, because if you take that out of him, he's not the same.
The other thing is that he's the type of player that will get better the more confidence he gets, and he's getting more and more confidence in this position. I mean, he's still so new.
Right.
He told me this week at practice, you know, there's so much that he's still learning every single day. So this kid is going to be a player.
And Corey Hall, the cornerbacks coach for Oregon State, said he actually reminds him of Chad Johnson, especially in the confidence.
Wow.
Is that too strong of a comparison?
Okay, I know.
A lot of guys have Chad Johnson confidence.
Yeah, confidence and competitiveness. You know, maybe the quick feed and the sudden burst,
Too early,
but
though. Too early
Chad
for
has
that,
really
right?
good routes,
Right?
you know.
So how soon do you think we see a receiving touchdown from him?
Let's say this
Needs to
week.
be this
Come on,
week.
Steph,
This
get in the
week,
end zone, baby.
All right, later in the show, we're going to hear from backup quarterback Connor Blount, what he says about his introduction to Reser Stadium on Saturday. But first, are we any closer to learning who will be Oregon State's new athletic director? A look at the candidates coming up next. Welcome back. Here is a look at the search committee to find a new AD at Oregon State. And just today, the name at the top of that list, Marian Vidra, named as the interim athletic director. She held the same position between Bob DeCarolis and Todd Stansbury's tenures. College AD naming her one of the top 10 senior women administrators in the NCAA. She's also chairperson for soccer, softball, gymnastics. And we are taking a closer look at the search for a new AD in the Les Schwab Quick Fix. When you look at that list of folks on the search committee, do you feel like they've got a good mix there?
I think Nigel has some thoughts that he'd like to share with the room.
Good grief. Look, the guy that you need to make sure sticks around that place is Gary Anderson. You didn't listen to him the first time, took no input from him, and obviously Todd Stansbury was a home run. But now, the second time around, if you want to keep basically the biggest name person you have signed onto that campus, and God knows how long, maybe ever, Gary Anderson might be the biggest coaching hire you've had in the history of that program. A great way to get him to leave is to ignore him now. So to not have him on the search committee, and to be honest with you, in talking to Gary on Tuesday, really felt like I was reading between the lines. Like, I didn't even know that until I just saw that graphic that he wasn't on the search committee. And I'm scratching my head. Now, I've been around a lot of idiot presidents back in the day, so I'll be honest with you, who knows? I'm not saying that that's what Ed Ray is being right now, but there's a lot of guys I've been around that were clueless. And I don't know, I hope that at some point there's some conversations that happen behind the scenes.
I'm not sure that Ed Ray was aware there was a football team at this university until 2013. Ed Ray did not capitalize on the success of the years that they almost went to the Rose Bowl. So that's my take on it, and you can ask anyone in town and anyone that was on the old staff.
Yeah, and I realize we're using some harsh language, so I want to backtrack on the whole idiot, but it is mind-boggling that you would not have, and it's been very public, by the way, saying Gary Anderson needs to be part of this decision process.
Right.
And so to keep him out of it, once again, I'm really hoping that it's one of those, hey, Gary, listen, here's the bat phone. I got you. I'm going to keep you off the list so you can focus on the football season.
Right.
But you have a direct line to me on what you think about this.
Well, that's my point too, Coach. How realistic is it for Coach Anderson to be year 2 of the rebuild? Let's take yourself and put your coaching shoes back on. You're trying to build a program. You're developing guys. We haven't been winning, and now something like this drastic happens to the program. How involved can you be in a search when we're trying to search for our first victory in the conference?
To be honest with you, easy. That's easy. I've got a bunch of things that I do that I can cut back on in terms of interviews with Comcast Sportsnet. To be honest with you, before I would.
Listen to that.
We don't want that, Gary.
I'm joking. I'm just saying, before the most critical hire to my success as a head football coach, I'd much rather be involved in that than even the game plan. That's what I hire all these other 11 guys to go do. You guys do that. I'll just rubber stamp it, because nothing is more critical to our long-term success, if I'm really going to be here, than this hire right here. I will find time to make that. I mean,
and this will be now, what, his 4th? I mean, if you count the interim, it'll be a 4th AD in.
This is the type of thing that makes coaches go away. So I agree with Nigel that you you want to keep him, you got to make sure we're all on the same page here.
And the other thing and I know Scott Barnes has been tossed around a lot because they work together at Utah State, and I don't know, I've never asked Gary about it. I haven't read anything about their relationship, but just because we work together doesn't mean I want to work with you again. There's probably, on my tenure, I've only had one AD that, looking back, like, geez, I'd really like to work with that person again.
The tough thing about this is going to be that I think one of the bad things about Oregon State, for lack of a better term, is that a lot of people look at it as a stepping stone job. Todd Stansbury didn't. He loved Oregon State. He went home to his alma mater. You cannot hold that against someone.
Well, you know, that bugs me a little bit. Not that he went home to his alma mater, but when you say, you know, this program is a stepping stone program, it's just like, I find that hard to believe when, you know, it's a BCS program. Oregon
It's a bottom third with the Pac-12.
Hey, I mean, depending on when we play, though, because when I played, I finished in the top third, you know, 4 times out of 5 years. So
I think what Lindsay's referring to is when you talk about revenue, when you're talking about market share, when you're talking about
it's all about the Benjamins, baby.
You're right. Well, that's why I think we need to do a better job of hiring within the Oregon State community, people that have a sense of pride and want to be there long term.
All right.
Apparently, we got no feelings on any of this.
Doc
is for AD. All right, calling all trivia buffs. Make sure to join us for our CSN Trivia Challenge. You can win cash and prizes. Here's a look at some upcoming games in your area. And still ahead on the show, Connor Blount telling us what it was like to see action versus Boise State.
I was not expecting it that early. I mean, I had gotten reps in practice throughout the week, but for it to happen in Game 3, I was not expecting that. And obviously, most people around here weren't expecting to see that either.
But first, a closer look at the Buffs quarterback play will be under center come Saturday. A look at Folsom Field, the site of this weekend's Pac-12 opener for Oregon State as they get ready to take on Colorado on the road on Saturday. We're going to be talking more about Colorado in just a couple of minutes. But I know, Lindsay, you had, everybody was fired up about this AD search. So Lindsay has some more to say. She wants to get off her chest.
Okay, so Doc, I love your passion, your enthusiasm for Oregon State. I think that's awesome. Like, I'm an alum too. I care about this school. I know it doesn't always come across that way. But here's the thing. This is what you have to think about, okay? So let's say you go there as a coach. This is an easier scenario as a coach. And you're a D coordinator making $500,000. That's great. You can make a good living off $500,000, right? And then you find out that 8 other schools in the Pac-12 are paying their DC $700. And then you find out that 3 of them are paying them $900.
Right.
And you're sitting there going, I beat those guys. Like, what the heck? Am I not being valued? That's not what happened with Stansbury.
Right.
He went home to his alma mater. Lots of respect for that. That's the situation that I think Oregon State finds itself in continually, right. And that's when we were talking about it's a bottom third job. They don't have money. Like, the support staff at Oregon State does not make anything compared to other schools in the Pac-12.
Well, I agree with you. I guess if, you know, that individual is money motivated and they're driven, I mean, I'm driven by money myself, but I mean, $500,000 to coach football for a school that I bled for and love, that sounds like a great deal. I'll go buy a house right there in Corvallis and sign me up for 12 years. I'm fine with that.
What if you're a support staff member making $35,000?
I mean, that's going to be a hard sell. It's going to be a hard sell. But that's why I said, if you find guys that are black and orange guys, maybe that's an easier sell.
And I just think that's why Lindsay's point of, you know, it has sometimes can be a stepping stone job for a lot of places because you do have support staff will constantly be moving in and out of the door on you. It's, you know, even when you get that top job, then your assistant AD and your associate AD and then the director of this, they're all moving in and out and you're constantly retraining people. It can be frustrating when you're that person at the top, even though you love the school, you love the program, and when you start getting lured away. So I understand that it's going to be a difficult thing. I'll be honest with you, that's the thing that concerns me a little bit about Scott Barnes. Scott Barnes, now, if you look at the places he's been in some big-time places that throw money around, like the University of Washington. He's at Pittsburgh. I'm not sure he would leave Pittsburgh to come back. You know, and Utah State, all those things. So is he a guy that, if he was interested in the job, wants to come back, and I think he'd be a steal if you got him, how long would he want to be here?
Exactly.
Because he's a guy who then USC would look at when Lynn Swann left. He would be a guy that, you know, all these different places would look and throw a lot of money to leave, and he obviously doesn't mind being in cities. And so, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces to it, and I totally agree. And that's why I was more of an advocate of a Marianne Vidra, a Mark Massari, for not just continuity, but you knew where their heart lied.
Right.
All right, we're going to turn things around, focus on Colorado now in our Toyota of Portland on Broadway tune-up. Guys, when you look at the numbers for Steven Montez, again, stepping in there for Colorado, 468 total yards, 4 touchdowns, one of those a rushing touchdown for him. What was kind of your thoughts of on him this weekend?
Well, the Oregon defense is not very good. That's part of it. But you talked about, we talked about it earlier with Connor Blount, like stepping in a big moment. Like, look, Austin is a tough place to play. So for him to walk in that environment and do what he did, lead them, at the end, they were in it the whole game. And a lot of times in these type of situations, Colorado is like trying to win this game so bad and the Ducks are supposed to win, you fold. And I don't think that he folded at all.
No, I mean, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. The guy, he just looks like he's tough. He's out there competing. As you can see on those clips, he's out there dragging defenders around. He just seems like a guy that stepped in and took advantage of his opportunity. I'm sorry about that. 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but that's not bad for your backup quarterback at all.
Look, when it really comes down to it, this still is a guy who went 0 against Michigan, okay? And literally the wheels fell off. They were up by 3, ended up losing by, 18 in that game? So,
I mean, Michigan is one of the best teams in the country.
I've watched both games very well. We paid a lot of attention to it. And really the thing that really struck you was, as much as Steven Montez played a heck of a football game, his wide receiver core did the thing that you need the Oregon State wide receiver. They made play after play after play. It was a ESPN highlight. You could have done the top 10 plays out of that one game from that receiving core. There were one-handed grabs. There were guys laying out to make catches. They did all the things that you needed that team to do at that moment in that game. And then Lindsey still ran loose. So those are the things that we need Oregon State to do. Yeah.
I don't have one.
You could.
Again, Colorado was one of those games that a lot of people looked at and said, oh, Oregon State could win this. But there's a lot of similarities between these rebuilding efforts. At Colorado, Oregon State, you can kind of see Mike McIntyre's tenure there at Colorado. What is he doing well? And particularly when you look at that jump from last year to this year.
You know what?
Just upperclassmen?
Well, I had him on my show on Monday and just asked him, and he talked about a set of values that he has stuck with, whether he was at San Jose State or he's at Colorado, and that's a long-term build. The problem is, by year 3 or 4, if those wins don't start happening, the patience runs thin, and you get kicked out before you start reaping the proceeds. Right. Not that I know anything about that. So what it comes down to is, for them, the Colorado job, to me, is a harder job to turn around than Oregon State.
And it was in considerably worse shape.
Oh, it was in worse shape. You're talking about the recruiting restrictions that they put on themselves when you talk about players taking trips with curfews, and then you talk about there's a state law in the state of Colorado that says only 6 people on the entire campus can have multi-year contracts. So you're talking the head football coach and maybe 1 assistant. The others are the president, the athletic director, and maybe the men's, one of the basketball coaches. So there's so many things that put them behind the 8 ball there that I think they had to be patient. Oregon State's not in that situation. So you would hope that Gary Anderson would turn things around a lot faster.
Yeah, Lindsey, what's again, being around the program, what kind of similarities do you see at Oregon State?
I don't think they're that similar, because I agree with Nigel that they're like much more, in the cellar. But I think that being patient, building on those things, believing, I don't think that there were so many times, was it 2 years ago that they should have beat UCLA in overtime at their place? They didn't let that mentally break them, and so then you see a win like this, and that's huge. Now the question is, this could be an emotional letdown week for them with Oregon State coming in. Oregon State, like a 14.5-point favorite. Colorado 14.5-point favorite to open. It's at the line's at 17 now. It's going to be really interesting this weekend.
All right, a little later in the show, our analysts give their picks for their X Factor in Saturday's game. And right around the corner, we're taking a closer look at Connor Blount, why he got the shot on Saturday over Marcus McMaryion. We'll discuss.
We are searching as best we can. Even the public relations people here at Oregon State are unaware of who number 12 at quarterback is. And we're told it's Connor Blount, a freshman walk-on. And they roll him out. He lets it fly into a tight space, and it's caught over the middle. Ortiz.
We see the patience there.
Looping it. It is caught.
Outstanding pitch and catch.
And Connor Blount, the walk-on freshman, cementing his spot as the backup over Marcus McMaryion. Here's a look at the depth chart versus Colorado. Garrettson still listed as a starter. In fact, he wasn't even in the injury report this week. And Connor Blount had most fans asking who when his number was called on Saturday. And it sounds like Connor may have been just as surprised when he was told that he was going in the second half. Lindsey sat down with the freshman this week to get to know Connor a little better.
We are searching as best we can to find who the dueling number 12 to Kendall Hill would be at quarterback. Even the public relations people here at Oregon State are unaware.
What an introduction on Saturday. Were you expecting that? I don't think that Beaver Nation was.
I was not expecting it that early. I mean, I had gotten reps in practice throughout the week, but for it to happen in Game 3, I was not expecting that. And obviously, most people around here weren't expecting to see that either.
And we're told it's Connor Blount, a freshman walk-on.
I heard that on the sideline, people, even your teammates, were so caught off guard, they were just cheering on number 12.
Yeah. I got a lot. That's what I've been. I mean, they've called me QB, number 12, throughout camp, you know, and I think now they know my name, I'd say.
Connor Blunt. That's a wide open Bolden.
This kid is settling in. Maybe a surprise to us. He's got confidence in him.
Talk to me about being a walk-on. It's a really tough path for anyone to take. How did you wind up here, and what's it been like?
Definitely a walk-on kind of brings you down to earth a little bit, you know? I felt like I was overlooked, and I knew I could play at this level. That's why I kind of took the jump to come here. And yeah, it was real tough, honestly. It was real tough, but I stuck with it, and I knew that things were gonna start to look up. You know, I put in a lot of work at this game, and I love this game, so I couldn't give it up, you know?
Well, they roll him out. He lets it fly into a tight space, and it's caught by Collins.
What did Coach Anderson talk to you guys about afterward? And as players, what did you talk about?
He said we're a few plays away, and that's what we're really trying to build on. Is we are right there. You know, no matter who's in there, we have a lot of talent. You got to take positives from a game like that, you know. Yeah, we lost, but we're so close. And going into Pac-12 play, it's 0-0 for us. That's huge for us as far as what we can look forward to and what we have to look forward to.
And we are taking a closer look at Connor Blount in our Comcast business class built for tomorrow. Here's a look at some of his stats against Boise State in the second half. Now, Gary Anderson saying afterwards it was his decision to play Blount over Marcus McMaryion, Mason Moran. I want to know, why did they go with Connor Blount?
You know, I'm not sure that any of us will ever know the answer to this, but I will say Boise State was completely caught off guard too, so maybe that was it. He can move pretty well, you know, brings that to the field. What he did against Boise State, really impressive. He's not going to do that against Colorado if he plays against Colorado. Colorado has film on him now.
I don't know. I wouldn't be too sure about that. I think he came in. He seemed confident in where he's running. The coaches did a good job of getting him on the edge, as you can see. That's a big-time throw right there. And I think there's more to this as the season goes on. I'm not wanting to say that it's a quarterback controversy, but if you keep making throws like that, I think that you can make a controversy.
Yeah,
you know?
Good point.
Well, and that was kind of one of my questions is that, okay, there's no quarterback controversy, but if Daryl Garrettson starts playing poorly, is there?
Well, I mean, obviously you have a guy that you feel like can go to. But, I mean, look at Colorado. You'd say the same thing about Cephos. Cephos struggled a lot in his career. So if all of a sudden Cephos started to struggle against Oregon State or anybody else in the future, would they not go to Steven Montez? Having two quarterbacks you feel like you're comfortable with isn't a bad thing. That's a great thing. That being said, I mean, you still watched some things and some throws and some decisions that were made. Daryl Garrettson still makes better decisions. He still had a higher completion percentage. He just didn't have maybe some of the open windows that Blount did later. I'm not sure. I think that anticipating a particular quarterback, unless you're talking about a guy who can run versus a guy who's a stiff, if the plays don't change, if the system doesn't change too much, and I know Doc could speak to this, I don't think that makes a huge difference unless you had a guy who was a standing tree and another guy who was a runner. Yeah. So I'm not sure that, you know, Colorado having film on him is going to make a huge difference.
You know, personally, I really like Marcus too, just, you know, as a fan. You know, I was really surprised not to see him in there. But, you know, I'm not there every day watching these guys, so I trust Coach Anderson to make the right decision.
Bottom line is that in this conference, you need two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I mean, you were down there this week. What was kind of the, I guess, perception around Daryl Garrettson? I mean, do you feel like he's 100%?
I don't think that he's 100%. I don't think that anyone's 100% at this point in the season for any team. I'm not sure that Daryl thinks that, though. I think Daryl thinks he can go, which is good. You want someone who's tough. You need to be tough to play the position. So I think for now, this is still his team, but, you know, Doc's right that you can make a controversy.
And I think Lindsey hit the nail on the head. You look at across the conference right now, Arizona, 2 quarterbacks, USC, 2 quarterbacks, Stanford, 2 quarterbacks. You know, you keep going down the list. Oregon, good knows how many quarterbacks they play last year. So you have to have them, and they have to be efficient.
All right, and we are asking you to weigh in on social media. Gary Anderson saying there's no quarterback controversy, but should there be? Weigh in by voting yes or no. We will be revealing the results on #BeaversFB on Friday. And to get you ready for the road, Doc taking a trip to the OSU Beaver store to see what's new versus Colorado.
Hey Beaver Nation, we're back at the OSU Beaver Store campus location. And while our guys are down in Colorado taking on those Buffaloes, we have to remind you that home is where the heart is. To help you remember that, we have a few different selections. We have a tank top here with the famous phrase, "How about those Beavers?" We also have a simple white t-shirt here with the star on the #1 college town, Corvallis, Oregon. Fellas, we didn't forget about you. We have a few different selections for you as well. We have one short sleeve tee, one long sleeve tee, one with the star, and one with the beaver, but both reflecting the #1 college town in the United States, Corvallis, Oregon. We have everything you need here and more at the OSU Beaver Store. Fans, start here.
Welcome back. Here's a look at the remainder of the Beavers schedule. Of course, heading into Pac-12 play this weekend and a tough road ahead, starting with Colorado this weekend. And our flat tail, damn good moment this week is Colorado beating Oregon in Eugene behind just a monster game from Steven Montez. The Buffaloes' first victory over the Ducks since joining the Pac-12 in 2011. And Lindsay, you said there was some pretty big cheers, huh, in Corvallis?
Second week in a row, the biggest cheer at Research Stadium was for when the Ducks score was announced 2 weeks ago when they lost to Nebraska, and then this week when they lost to Colorado. Or, you know, Oregon State fans are thinking, well, if we can't get a win, at least neither can the Ducks.
My two favorite teams are Oregon State and whoever's playing the Ducks.
Exactly.
Can't blame them. Gotcha.
I mean, back-to-back close losses. People are already calling for Mark Helfrich's head. Too early for that? Is it?
I think it's
Well,
a
and
little
I know
too early.
shaking his head.
It's not like they didn't play for a BCS
Right.
national championship too many years ago. I mean, geez.
Right?
But
They hand those out.
this is a sport. This is a what have you done for me lately sport. And whether or not we think it's ridiculous doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. I think there's look, I'm not picking them to win this week. And I think Washington's going to beat them. Washington's probably going to break the streak.
If they lose 4 games in a row, I mean, it would literally be like dogs living with cats. The world's axis is spinning backwards.
People are gonna be swan diving off the bridges in
straight
Portland.
pandemonium in Eugene. People wouldn't even know what to do.
I don't think it'll be that bad. I think all those fans will be right back rooting for the Huskies like they were 6 or 7 years ago. So.
And
Wow.
speaking of Washington, a very big game hosting Stanford tomorrow. Obviously, it took overtime to get a win against Arizona. What did we learn about Washington this week?
Mobile quarterbacks are going to give them some problems. They are built to beat a team like Stanford. So if the score Friday night in Seattle is 3-0, either way, I won't be surprised.
I'll tell you this: Stanford's got a lot of injuries right now. In particular,
3 members of their secondary are not going to play.
And so, and I know Stanford's done a nice job, but you've got some real dudes at receiver at Washington right now. John Ross is playing out of his mind. You've got Pettis, you've got Darrell Daniels, you've got Chico McClatcher. They have got some guys who can make plays running all over that secondary, and they're one of the best running teams. So just like Lindsay said, they're built to be. They were built, designed to beat Stanford. You get them in Husky Stadium and injury prone.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Shea Fields. They got a lot of guys up there that can go get the ball, but for some reason, I can't root against Stanford unless they're playing the Beavers. I just really buy into what they do over there, and I figure, like, hey, it doesn't matter who's lining up with Stanford. They buy into the program. They're going to do what their coaches say. They'll execute and win.
I think you're right. Like, when are we going to stop picking against David Shaw for crying out loud? Like, we should learn our lesson, and Christian McCaffrey is the best player in the country.
You picked against them? I've never picked against. I'm picking this weekend.
I have.
But maybe for
You
obvious
have
reasons.
to, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
I'm not losing my
You're getting
card.
honored this weekend.
But that being said, never mind, I'm not going to do it.
Still ahead, we're wrapping things up by picking our X factors for this weekend's game. And Beavers fans, make sure to check out Inside the Huddle coming up tomorrow at 8:30. You can hear from Gary Anderson. He talks a little bit about Sean Harlow's return, so you definitely want to check that out. As we look towards Colorado, guys, it is time to weigh in on your X factors. Lindsay?
Well, Sean Harlow, you took the
perfect
words right out of my
timing,
mouth. Look, I think it's unfair to say he needs to be the savior of the offensive line, but he does right now. Sean, sorry, those are the stakes.
No
okay?
pressure, baby.
Protect your quarterback. This poor kid, whoever it is, if it's Connor, if it's Garrettson, if it's someone else, Marcus McMaryion, they're getting beat up too much. So I think that it will be him. He can make an immediate impact.
I have to agree with you. I mean, I think that we need him to be an impact player. I mean, our quarterbacks are getting hit too much. We need a little bit more time. We need to generate some more holes and push for the run game. And so Sean coming back, bringing that experience, I really look forward to him adding a little boost this week.
All right, Doc, and you're picking somebody on the offense too, right?
I'm picking Seth Collins again. I love Seth Collins.
It's only because Seth used to wear number 4. That's why you like
I
him.
love him because
Stick
that's a
with
guy
him.
that I would love to play with and play against, honestly, in one-on-ones, because that guy just competes. I'm really thinking that Seth is really just starting to find his groove as a receiver. receiver. So I'm waiting for him to take a step forward against a Pac-12 secondary that has some playmakers back there.
How much do you think that he is helping Oregon State secondary as well, pushing them?
I think on a day-to-day, in practice, that one-on-one, that competition, me and James Rogers used to bring out the best out of each other because he'll say a little something, I say a little something. Next thing you know, it turns into a big something, and now all the guys are fired up. The energy increases in practice, and it's a little fun.
I think our next one-on-one segment needs to be Doc at practice going one-on-one against Seth Collins.
Hey,
I like it.
I haven't worked out in a few weeks, but I got some
I
tips
think
for
he'd burn you.
I want you to imagine if Seth Collins didn't come back to this football team, what that wide receiver core or what this offense would look like. Oof. Good grief. So, yeah, appreciate you, Seth. My X factor, I think would have to be Victor Bolden. When you look at the last two games, the games that he's had, the amount of abuse he took between me and Lindsay over the past year and a half, and the fact the last two games he has really shown up. And he played well against Minnesota. I'd say okay, but really came on. And what I'm looking for is he's got to do this. He's got to take advantage of the special teams game. That is the one place that Colorado has struggled immensely. They gave away the Michigan game because of special teams, their punt team in particular. So need a big return, need a touchdown out of his return game, be honest with you. And then he needs, I'm going to say it, Seth Collins-like numbers at the receiving core.
No doubt.
When you got a guy, if you got Seth going 9 for over 100, you got Victor Bolden going 9 for over 100. Special teams, now that opens up things for Ryan Nall. I coached Jake, his brother. Ryan Nall to get loose and be that wrecking Nall. That's how you come out of Boulder with a win.
None of us picked defensive players. If I were a defensive player watching this, I would be offended by that and be trying to make a statement.
Tristan, I almost picked you, but I've been picking you for everything.
If
man.
you're
Just
a
keep
defensive
balling,
player and you're watching this, get some sleep and watch some film. Stop watching television.
That is the coach speaking, right? What do you feel like is the difference, for Victor Bolden, real quick, before we go? Between that first week to the last two.
That's a great question. If you could figure that out, I'd bottle it and sell it for a lot of money. You'd get a lot of buyers. Whatever it is, man, it's come alive for the kids. So
just rhythm and confidence.
All right, join us for #BeaversFB on Friday nights and vote on social media. Send us your questions. We'll see you then.